Hello, Assalamu alaikum everybody. Hope you're all safe, sound and healthy. And now we're going to go for part 2, which is very, very, very important. It's equally essential as the first part, in which I talked about how two of those vloggers were right at one point, but also a bit wrong in certain points. But now we're going to get down to business, okay? I think the thing that Mr. L. Boyd pointed out while reacting to what happened to the female Korean vlogger, where there were a couple of minors. They were actually minors, those young boys. And, one of the boys pushed the other deliberately. One of the boys pushed the other boy onto her so that he would, hit her or touch her and all, bump into her. Okay. Now, let me tell you one thing. This is a mentality that people really, really need to teach their boys, because I find that very funny when all these Hindu scholars and Muslim scholars of the subcontinent, every time you listen to their speeches, they're always talking about what women should and shouldn't do. Always. They're always emphasizing on all the sins that a woman can commit and all the wrongs that a woman... And even, it's very funny because right now I was actually, while passing by getting stuff done, I was listening to some random scholar. God knows who he is. I don't listen to scholars, so I can't be bothered by them, because I go by the real Islamic teachings, which is do all the research yourself, study Islam yourself, don't listen blindly to other people. That is shirk. So anyway, but my mom was just listening to some random scholar, and for her there's just background noise, I guess, because she doesn't even pay much attention, it seems, sometimes, because she's too busy doing other stuff. But anyway, in passing, just passing by, I heard him say, talk about how children today are, it's true. Most of the things he was saying was absolutely right. I have no problems. But that one point that he emphasized on is that, little girls, young girls in schools, and they're getting into drug addiction. Excuse me? What happened to the boys? Aren't the boys getting into drug addiction? Isn't our major problem in Pakistan right now the fact that this illegal government and the army have literally, they have done nothing. They have all but promoted addiction just so that they could completely render our youth useless. Our youth, which is supposed to be our country's main resource, the one that Imran Khan was always talking about. They decided to render our youth useless by getting them into drugs without even their knowledge, in as low as kindergarten. I mean, students who are going to kindergarten are coming home and asking, what is this drug? I mean, they're naming the drugs and saying, what is it, And you're looking at them thinking, okay, as long as they were at home, they didn't know jack shit. The minute they've started kindergarten, they're asking me what this drug is, because it's in their candies, it's in their sweets, and then their hair things. Listen, this is the age of media. This is the age of social media. It's the age of technology, information technology, which means that no matter how young or old you are, you will get exposed to a lot of stuff, a lot of information. There is no such thing as PG. Unfortunately, in most countries, including ours, there is no actual PG, as in, that is actually implemented to ensure that, children do not have access to certain information. And then, as I said, because it's not just in Pakistan, it's all over the world where drug addiction is once again becoming rampant, because it is really, it is beneficial. It is beneficial to certain authorities, like the American establishment. It is beneficial to the British establishment. It is beneficial to Pakistani establishment. It is beneficial to all these countries and their establishments that their youth should be rendered useless, because that means they're easy to control. You understand? You have, a controllable population. You have more authority. You can abuse that authority. You can go around doing whatever it is you want. Nobody's there to stop you, basically, okay? So this always starts with minors. Notice that when minors get into this trap or into this game or into this play, it means your authorities are responsible, like it or not. So here we are. I mean, this random asked person talking about, oh, see how girls are now getting into. What about the boys, man? In all my previous podcasts, I've been yapping about drug addiction. I've been yapping about this theme, and nobody else before was talking about it. I think I was the only one who kept on and on talking about it in my podcasts and mentioning it on my social media. And now when a few people are beginning to talk about it, and when as why is it that you're always, this is a question I really have for Muslim scholars and Hindu scholars and Christian scholars and Jew scholars. Why is it that you're always on and on about what women can and cannot do and what women should and should not? Why don't you teach the men the laws? Because as I know, because I am somebody who has studied Islam as well, I know that in Islam there are more stricter prohibitions for men as opposed to women. Actually, men have so many rules to follow as compared to women. Men have so many restrictions as compared to women. So why are you always fixating on women? I mean, it's so funny that even when you're talking about drug addiction, you're talking about the little girls who are getting. Why aren't you talking about the little boys? They're the ones who are supposed to grow up into responsible men. They're the ones who are supposed to be a resource in the sense that they're the ones who are supposed to head their families. They're the ones who are supposed to earn enough money to be breadwinners for their homes. They're the ones you're supposed to look into, you mofo. Why are you emphasizing on how bad it is that the little girls are getting addicted? It is bad, but you know what's just as bad? The little boys that are getting addicted. And even now, the ratio of girl to boy getting addicted is that boy is more, okay? The number of boys who are, junkies or who are into drugs or who are getting addicted is much, much larger as compared to girls, because even now girls are actually much more responsible, much more mature. They're the ones who are studying, they're the ones who are getting an education, they're the ones who are making their careers, whereas boys have only two things in mind: just lounge around and then get married. Because nobody has taught them. Again, as scholars, it is your duty to teach boys that they are not allowed in Islam to get married unless they stand on their own 2 feet, unless they can actually earn their own money. And when they earn their money, then they're supposed to go get their own homes, and then they're supposed to say, okay, I'm ready to get married. Why don't you teach them that, you mofo? So coming back to the matter at hand now, which I have to continue, because I would digress a bit too much then while making other simple points. And that is that, the mentality here in the subcontinent has been for a very, very long time that foreign women are easy. Okay, this is actually, I'm trying to tackle the situation here where, what happened to the Korean girl and how she was treated in India, and how many women also say that they seem to be treated in India. And as I said, thankfully, to be honest, I have no trust in our men either, because at the end of the day, they're all the same, Pakistani, Indian, Bangladeshis. But good to know that at least some decency still remains in the Muslim half of the subcontinent, where they know how to behave. But to be honest, Muslim or non-Muslim, the whole subcontinent has had this mentality for the longest time. And I remember how I've had to actually divest many men of this mentality. Listen, Indians especially, just like how Bollywood does not represent you and your society and your culture, this is how Hollywood does not represent the Western culture or the Western society. Okay? This is how Korean movies do not represent the Korean culture. The dramas, to a large extent, may, okay, but you will notice that even in the dramas, then they do have that culture that they keep on, and actually that is the reason why more and more people kind of gravitated towards K-dramas and Chinese dramas and Japanese dramas, but especially Chinese and Korean dramas, is because that even till date they maintained that decency. The reason why people gravitated towards Pakistani dramas is because till date they maintain that decency. You're not handsy with each other, you're not physical with each other. There's no, always these unnecessary physical contact. And in fact, the importance of not having physical contact, the importance of keeping a distance, the importance of having a clean relationship, that has always been emphasized until this year. This year is where they've started showing a little more mature content within their general content, is what I'm saying. Before, they used to have a separate mature content, but their general content always kept to these PG stuff, right? To the stuff where they did not show PG stuff, in other words. And the same is with Pakistani dramas. They, so even that is why even in Pakistani dramas, when the new generation decided and the new dramas decided that no, we should show a bit of physical contact. After all, you're showing husband and wife, or you're showing lovers, or this and that. But the audience was not too happy about it. You know why? Because I'm sorry, but it is not part of our culture. You will not see husband and wives showing, PDA. I mean, it's a fact, okay? In our culture, PDA is not a thing. In Indian culture, PDA is not a thing. In Bangladeshi culture, it's not a thing. In fact, even in most Asian cultures, okay, PDA is not a thing. Okay, even in most African cultures, it's not. It's, you don't go around displaying your affections for each other in public. Okay, it's not a thing, and it's not normal, and so it doesn't look natural when you try to show it in your dramas and movies. It's as simple as that. But what people do not understand, because they've been preconditioned by Hollywood for so many decades, they do not understand that the Americans or the Europeans are just as, if not more, conservative than we are. If you think you're very conservative, you have no clue how conservative the Europeans, especially, and even the Americans. A typical American is a very conservative person, just like us. They don't go for this shit. Okay? So, again, it is thanks to Hollywood. Hollywood is, and Bollywood. These are the two main perpetrators. These are the two main problems that have created this whole, global issue, basically, where people are, they keep on thinking that, oh, if they're white, or if they're foreigners, or if they, if they're from so and so country, then they're, as long, if they're not desis, in other words, if they're not locals, if they're not from the subcontinent, then they're easy. The women are easy, because the women are, they go around sleeping with any guy they like to. They have such that's their kind of a lifestyle. Well, you're wrong. And this is something, as I said, I have been trying to divest men of this mentality. Women are not easy, whether they are native women or African women, or your Asian women, or American women, or European women. No woman is easy. Every woman is just as bit as conservative as your own Indian woman, and you need to get that into your thick skull. Okay, so finally, I think the Pakistanis have got that into their thick skull, because, as I said, mashallah, touch wood, no complaints from any foreign women here. But in India, the complaints are just rising and rising and rising, okay, of sexual harassment. Now, as I said, the Indians also need to fix that mentality of theirs, that not all foreign women are easy. In fact, no woman is easy. Treat every woman as your own, because if in anything, it is just showing you in a bad light. I mean, you're going around talking about the Indian culture, and you're talking about how how conservative your culture is, and how you have a joint family system, and how you, but what is your practice right now? People are looking at your practice. What is your practice? Is that you mistreat women, you harass women, that as long as she's a female, it doesn't matter who she is, and it doesn't matter if you are a minor, you think that, I mean, as I said, this is a global thing, because if you go on social media, you will see that there are many TikToks and many, shorts that have been made on the subject called Boys Will Be Boys, where they've shown that even toddlers are going around getting physical with women, touching their asses and stuff. And you're like, what the frack, right? But, they're like, oh, wow. So this is a global thing. As we said, all men are a-holes in general. So you see, how do you like that stereotyping? But it's a fact. A fact is a fact, okay? The fact is that majority men are a-holes, and they just can't keep they just can't keep it in their pants. And you know why? Again, it's because of all these so-called Christian scholars, and all these so-called Muslim scholars, and all these so-called priests, and all these so-called monks, and all these so-called Jewish scholars, and all these so-called men, general men of the West, who have constantly propagated the fact that women are objects. They have been objectifying women for so long that they have even tainted the feminist movement. The whole point of, again, I would remind the West, is the whole point of the feminist movement was because women saw that in Islamic societies, in authentic Islamic societies, pre-colonialism, they noticed, and during colonialism, they noticed that in Muslim cultures and in Muslim societies, women were equal. In the Ottoman Empire, women worked just like men worked. Even in the times of the Prophet, peace be upon him, women worked. As I told you, his own wife was a businesswoman. His other wife, she had a job. You know, the women worked equally side by side with men. They did everything normally as anybody would. There were no restrictions, no curfews, nothing of the sort. Everybody was fine. Everybody was doing their stuff. Everybody was living their lives, okay? And women inherited, obviously, in the Islamic law, women inherit their own properties. Women have their own businesses. Women invest their own money. They are 100% owners of their own finances. Nobody is allowed to touch a woman's money, by the way, in Islam. Even the husband is not allowed to touch his wife's money, by the way. And neither is a father allowed to touch his daughter's money. Her money is hers exclusively, okay? In fact, her husband's money is hers too, by the way. Yeah. So here we are. Okay? So the West, when the women of the West saw that was actually the original concept behind the whole feminist movement, where they said that why can't we inherit our properties, and why are we treated as objects and possessions, and why are we going through this shit? And then you later on went and tainted the whole feminist movement by saying, oh, we can wear bikinis, we can move half nude, we can wear whatever we want because we are women and this is empowerment. No. You once again, just put yourself right under the men as sexual objects. You literally gave the men what they wanted. That is not feminism. Feminism is respecting yourself and forcing men to respect you, which is why the Holy Prophet was known as a feminist, by the way. Whenever the Western culture talked about the Holy Prophet, and whenever, peace be upon him, and whenever they talked about Islam, they were like, oh, Islam is a feminist religion. Oh, the Prophet was a feminist. Yeah, you know why? Because feminism is not what the West keeps on and on propagating and negatively about. Feminism is equalism. It's just that the West did not like the fact that women were fighting to be treated as equals, and so they started calling them feminists. The feminists never called themselves feminists, by the way. This is basically a derogatory term that was coined by men. It was coined by chauvinists, okay? They had a problem with women who wanted to be treated as human beings as their Muslim counterparts were. They had a problem with their women wanting to inherit their own properties as their Muslim counterparts were. Okay? They had a problem that their women were forcing them to treat them as equals and as independent individuals who have their own say, their own mind, their own decision-making abilities, their own finances. Okay? They had a problem with that. And so they started calling them feminists. Okay, so even now when people very ignorantly talk about feminists and feminism, I mean, one gets really tired of trying to explain to them that they are actually they don't even know what they're shitting about, because as I said, it's not feminism. It was never feminism. It was about demanding for equal rights as Islam had given everyone on earth, and demanding for the right to inherit your own property, demanding to be an equal individual, okay? It was a demand to be treated as a human being, not as a sexual object or as a possession or as a chattel, which is what they were treated as, okay? So don't you dare throw the feminism word on me. Seriously, I will just whip your ass. I will whip your ass if you talk to me about fucking feminism again, because you don't even know what the fuck you're talking about. You mofos. Okay? So yeah, this is a global phenomena. Again, you can't just pen it on the Indian, although to be honest, to be fair, the creepism that has been faced by the Indian men, it has become way out of hand, and it is very uncomfortable. And I can see that the fact that the Indians, and I guess people feel it more when it's in India, because as I said, India with its Bollywood and its international image and everything, it always shows itself to be the next superpower, the first world amongst first worlds, despite it being a third world, and it is at par with others, and it is a cream nation and this and that. And yet when you go to India, this is what you get. That is actually what gives the shock factor. The ignorance, the lack of mannerisms, the lack of etiquette, the lack of education, the lack of, that shocks people more. But you know what? People have these kind of expectations from Pakistan, because that is how Pakistan's image has been made out by the Western governments and by the Indian governments who have been propagating against Pakistan so loudly for decades. So this is why when they come to Pakistan, then they get that culture shock. Then they're like, Pakistan is what we expected India to be, and India is what we were told Pakistan would be, basically. Okay, so yeah, so that is why actually India is a double, triple, quadruple disappointment for the people. And it's understandable, because as I said, you're portraying yourself to be one kind of a country, but actually you're the total opposite. And as I've talked about this a long time ago in one of my podcasts, a friend of mine, a classmate of mine in the UK, she told me that as well. She's like, you know what, when I went to India, it was not at all the way I expected it to be. And she meant it in a negative way, but she was too nice and polite to say that. I'm like, hey, I'm a Pakistani. You can, say whatever you want. Seriously, it's not my country. But I mean, yeah, that's how it is. So yeah, Indians, they really, really need to get a grip on themselves, because this is not cool in any way. But it's just not cool. Okay, you can't think that, oh, you're, again, as I said, the impression now that you're giving to the rest of the world is this is how you treat your own women. And if you're going to say that, no, we treat our women with respect, it's only the foreign women that we treat like this, then that is even worse. That is even worse for you. You have literally just effed up your whole situation here by that hypocritical stance of yours is going to make people call you out more and more. Okay, and the truth is, you do not treat your women nicely either. Let's face it. I mean, that is why, again, when the Indians talk about their culture and their centuries old culture, where and they talk about it as if they're so civilized and all, and then you come up with this. Yes, it is. Then obviously you are going to listen to people complain about how they hate India and how they hate Indians and how they've had a bad experience. You are going to face that, let's face it. Okay? And this is also a lesson for Pakistanis for the future. I know that right now, as of now, Pakistanis have never ever given anybody such a, but that doesn't mean that we do not have such people. As I said, we do have such people. Thank you very much. And as I said, this is an Asian, not just an Asian, but this is a global mentality. All men are bitches. All men are bitches. They just can't keep it in their pants. And that is, again, as I said, it's not even just the scholars and the priests and the monks who are to blame. It's the schools and the educational systems who have never focused on teaching men how to behave. They've never even taught women how to behave, to be honest. But I mean, still, if you have character building lessons, then at least you could use that as an excuse to teach men how to behave, how to act, how to treat women. This is an essential teaching in Islam, and yet, unfortunately, nobody teaches their sons how to behave. You have very few families actually who follow these strict Islamic principles, where they literally teach their sons how to treat women, how to talk to women, how to behave in front of women, how to sit in front of women, how to talk in front of women. You used to find that in the old money families, or in the really old, noble families. But now, as you know, the old money people are all but extinct, and now you've got these kind of new money people who have come into money, but they never learned jack shit. That is also one of the predominant reasons why uncouthness has become common all over the world. Is because now money is more important than educating your child on how to think and how to talk and how to sit and how to walk and how to treat the opposite gender, mainly women here, and what are the do's and the don'ts. Yeah, I'm sorry to say, but these are facts and they matter, as we can see in front of us, because we are literally bearing the brunt of the consequences here. So these are facts that matter, and you need to get a grip on yourselves, all of you. Men, you need to teach your boys how to behave. Women, you need to teach your sons, because I do blame women a lot. I've noticed that just like how fathers dote on their daughters a lot, mothers dote on their sons a lot. And mothers seem to give all that freedom to their sons. Oh, he's a man, he's a boy, let him do this. Oh, he's a man. And they restrict the girls so much. I don't even understand. While in Islam, as I said, it's the opposite. In Islam, it's always been the opposite. In Islam, you restrict the boys a little more because you teach them more about responsibilities, about restrictions, about what is wrong, about how to behave, about this, blah, blah, blah. And for girls, you treat them like princesses, you know. But our post colonial countries have been fucked to this extent where we've got our priorities all wrong, and we've got our the way how to treat your children, that is all gone haywire, and people are giving more and more freedom to men all over the world, and then they sit and complain about, and because that is also why we have this victim bashing situation going on all over the world again, where a woman or a child or anybody who's the victim gets blamed for being the victim. This is the kind of society we're in. So we're never going to blame the perpetrator, be it a corrupt businessman who has stolen money or not paid money to their subcontractors, for example, or be it a politician who's fucking everybody around, or be it a rapist, or be it a molester, or be it a harasser, or be it anybody, a kidnapper, a killer, a murderer, or somebody who's stealing away the land mafia, be it the water mafia. It doesn't matter. Blame the victims every single time. This is what the world is amounted to. So that what I'm trying to say is that on the one hand, where I absolutely feel that yes, the subcontinent, especially India, they really, and even Pakistan, by the way, as I said, I don't care that Pakistani men have actually a good reputation amongst foreigners, but I still will say that Pakistani men, again, depending on, where they're from, they are the absolute pits as well. So because of their mentality that, women are, foreign women are easy. Use your freaking brains, morons. Again, if just like how you do not want people to refer to your culture based on your movies and your films, this is exactly how the Americans and the British and the Europeans will not like you to stereotype them all based on Hollywood. Use your damn brains, okay? Well, this is me signing out, unless I've again forgotten something, some key points, which I don't think I have. But anyway, this is me signing out. Khuda Hafiz.